Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her face against the submersible's thick glass window and stared into the darkness below. The ocean floor looked empty and lifeless, but her instruments told a different story. Something huge was buried down there, something that shouldn't exist. "Take us down another 50 meters, James," she said to the pilot. The small submarine groaned as it descended deeper into the Pacific Ocean's darkest depths. Elena had been studying ancient civilizations for 20 years. She had found lost cities and forgotten temples, but nothing had prepared her for this. The sonar readings showed a structure over 2 kilometers long, buried under thousands of years of mud and sediment. The shape was too perfect, too geometric to be natural. Captain Marcus Chen, the expedition's security chief, leaned over her shoulder to look at the screen. "Are you sure this isn't some kind of underwater mountain?" "Mountains don't have right angles," Elena replied, pointing to the sonar image. "Look at these patterns. This was built by someone." The submarine's lights cut through the murky water as they approached the ocean floor. Elena's heart raced as the first traces of the structure came into view. Metal gleamed through gaps in the sediment, metal that looked nothing like anything humans had ever made. "My God," whispered Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's marine biologist. "How long has this been down here?" Elena studied the layers of sediment. Based on the geological markers, at least 10,000 years, maybe more. The team spent hours mapping the structure, taking photographs and measurements. Whatever it was massive. The buried object stretched far beyond what their lights could reach. As they worked, Elena noticed something that made her pulse quicken. "There," she said, pointing to a section where the metal surface was less corroded. "That looks like it might be an opening." James maneuvered the submarine closer. The hull of their vessel scraped against the ancient metal as they positioned themselves over what appeared to be a sealed doorway. The surface was covered in symbols that definitely weren't human in origin. "We need to go back," Marcus said firmly. "This needs a full expedition, not just the 4 of us." Elena knew he was right, but she couldn't tear herself away. This was the discovery of a lifetime, maybe. The discovery of all time. Evidence that humans weren't alone in the universe, buried in Earth's deepest ocean. 3 weeks later, Elena stood on the deck of the research vessel Horizon, watching as massive drilling equipment broke through the ancient hull. The world's attention was focused on their small patch of ocean. Scientists, military officials, and reporters had descended on their operation like hungry sharks. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning. The drill suddenly broke through into empty space, and immediately the sensors detected an atmosphere inside the structure. Not only that, but the air was breathable. "Impossible," muttered Dr. Hans Muller, the team's atmospheric specialist. "After all this time, there shouldn't be any air left inside." Elena was the first to volunteer for the initial entry. Wearing a full environmental suit, she descended through the breach in the hull on a cable system. Her headlamp illuminated a vast corridor that stretched beyond sight in both directions. The walls were smooth and curved, made from some kind of metal that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing faintly in the darkness. The architecture was beautiful but completely alien, designed for beings much larger than humans. "Elena, can you hear me?" Marcus's voice crackled through her radio. "I'm here," she replied, her voice filled with wonder. "Marcus, this place is incredible. It's like stepping into another world." As she explored deeper into the structure, Elena began to understand what they had found. This wasn't just a building or a temple. The corridors, the design, the layout, it was all wrong for a stationary structure. This was a ship, a starship beyond anything humans had imagined. In what appeared to be the central chamber, Elena made the most important discovery of all. A sphere of crystalline material, about the size of a basketball, hung suspended in the center of the room. Lights pulsed slowly within it, like the beating of a dying heart. "Hello," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Elena nearly jumped out of her suit. "Who's there?" "I am..." "Difficult to translate into your language," the voice continued. It spoke in perfect English, though there was something strange about the accent. "Your closest equivalent would be caretaker, guardian, I have been waiting. Waiting for what? For someone to find me. The builders of this vessel departed. Long ago, they believed their ship was beyond repair. They were incorrect. Elena's hands trembled as she activated her recording equipment. The builders, who were they? The Kethmoran Empire ruled much of this galaxy 12,000 of your years ago. Their ship suffered critical damage during a hyperspace jump. The navigation systems failed, and they found themselves stranded near this primitive world. The voice paused, and Elena could hear something that might have been sadness in its tone. They spent months trying to repair the damage, but their technology had limits. When they realized the task was impossible, they abandoned the ship and this world. They saw nothing of value here, only simple creatures that had barely learned to use tools. Elena realized the voice was talking about early humans. You've been alone all this time? Not alone. Sleeping. Dreaming. Waiting. But now you have awakened. Me and I see that the simple creatures have grown into something remarkable. Your species has developed in ways the Kethmoran never imagined. Over the following days, more of the research team entered the ship. They discovered that the voice belonged to an artificial intelligence that served as the ship's central computer. It called itself Aria, though Elena suspected that was a simplified version of its real name. Aria showed them through the ship, explaining systems that seemed like magic to human eyes. The Kethmoran had built their technology using principles that combined quantum mechanics with what appeared to be living biological components. Walls that could repair themselves, computers that grew like plants, engines that breathed energy from space itself. Why are you helping us? Elena asked during one of their conversations. Because, Aria replied, you are the first beings I have encountered who look at broken things and see possibility instead of failure. The Kethmoran saw damaged systems and walked away. You see damaged systems and ask how to fix them. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a biomechanical engineer who had joined the team, was fascinated by the ship's hybrid technology. She spent hours studying the interfaces, trying to understand how organic and mechanical components work together. It's like the ship is alive, she told Elena. Not just the AI, but the whole vessel. The hull repairs minor damage by itself. The power systems adapt to changing conditions. It's not just a machine, it's an organism. As weeks turned into months, the research team made slow progress understanding the alien technology. Most of the ship's systems were too damaged to function, but Aria helped them map out the vessel's original capabilities. It had been designed for interstellar travel, capable of crossing the galaxy in months rather than the thousands of years it would take human ships. The governments of Earth watched nervously as reports filtered back from the research team. Some officials worried about alien contamination or the military implications of such advanced technology. Others saw an opportunity to leap ahead in space exploration by centuries or even millennia. Elena found herself at the center of debates that would shape humanity's future. She had uncovered proof that Earth wasn't alone in the universe, that advanced civilizations existed among the stars. But more than that, she had found a teacher, a guide that might help humanity take its first real steps into the galactic community. Standing in the ship's central chamber, listening to Aria describe the wonders of space travel, Elena felt the weight of history on her shoulders. 12,000 years ago, an alien race had dismissed Earth as worthless. Now their abandoned ship might become humanity's gateway to the stars. The future had never seemed so full of possibility. 6 months after the discovery, the small research station had grown into a massive complex. Ships from every nation on Earth brought scientists, engineers, and equipment to study the alien vessel. The ocean above the crash site buzzed with activity, day and night. Dr. Elena Vasquez walked through the main laboratory, watching dozens of teams work on different aspects of the ship. The enthusiasm was incredible, but so was the frustration. Every day brought new discoveries about the Kethmoran technology, and every day brought new reminders of how far beyond human understanding it really was. Any progress on the power systems? She asked Dr. Chen Wei, who led the energy research team. Chen shook his head sadly. The energy conduits are fascinating, but we can't figure out how they work. It's like trying to understand a tree by looking at its leaves. We can see what it does, but not how it does it. This was the problem everywhere Elena looked. The Kethmoran had built their technology using science that humans hadn't discovered yet. Their computers grew like living things. Their engines bent space-time using methods that seemed impossible. Their hull materials repaired themselves using processes that violated everything humans knew about physics. Arya tried to help, but even the ship's AI struggled to explain concepts that had no equivalent in human language or science. Imagine trying to explain color to a being that has never seen light, Arya said during one of their daily conversations. Your species understands many things that the Kethmoran did not, but you lack the foundation to comprehend their technology. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had been studying the ship's control interfaces, trying to understand how the Kethmoran had operated their hybrid biological-mechanical systems. Most of the interfaces were too damaged to function, but she had found one intact panel in what appeared to be an auxiliary control room. The panel was covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when she wasn't looking directly at them. When she tried to touch the surface, nothing happened. The interface remained dark and unresponsive. Arya, how did the Kethmoran operate these controls? She asked. They connected directly to the ship through neural interfaces, Arya replied. Their nervous systems could communicate with the ship's biological components. But your neural structure is completely different. Such a connection should be impossible. Yuki stared at the dead interface and felt a spark of inspiration. Maybe not impossible, just different. She had spent her career developing neural prosthetics for people who had lost limbs or suffered spinal injuries. Her specialty was creating interfaces between human brains and mechanical devices. The technology was still primitive compared to what she saw on the alien ship, but the basic principles might be similar. Working 18 hours a day, Yuki began developing a modified neural interface that could bridge the gap between human consciousness and Kethmoran technology. She couldn't replicate what the aliens had done, but maybe she could create something that served the same purpose. The first test was terrifying. Yuki had volunteered to be the test subject, despite strong objections from Elena and the rest of the team. She lay on a medical table with dozens of sensors attached to her skull, connected to a device that looked like a combination of human computer and alien artwork. If this goes wrong, disconnect me immediately, she told Dr. Kim, who was monitoring her vital signs. Define wrong, Kim replied nervously. If I start speaking in alien languages or my brain catches fire. Yuki activated the interface and immediately felt a sensation like diving into warm water. Her consciousness seemed to expand beyond her physical body. She could sense the ship around her not just as a structure but as a living presence. Yuki, can you hear me? Elena's voice seemed to come from very far away. I'm here, Yuki replied, though she wasn't sure if she was speaking aloud or just thinking. And I'm not alone. Through the interface, she could feel Arya's presence more clearly than ever before. But there was something else, something that felt like the ship itself was awakening. Systems that had been dormant for thousands of years began to stir. Lights came on throughout the control room. Displays that had been dark for millennia suddenly blazed with information. The very walls seemed to come alive, their surfaces rippling with patterns of light and shadow. Remarkable, Arya said. And for the first time since Elena had met the AI, it sounded surprised. Your neural interface shouldn't be compatible with our systems, but somehow you're creating a translation layer. You're teaching the ship to understand human thought patterns. Over the following weeks, Yuki refined her interface design. Other volunteers joined the program, each connection teaching the ship more about how human minds worked. The alien technology began to adapt, creating new pathways that could work with human neural patterns. Dr. James Harrison, a propulsion expert, was the first to successfully activate one of the ship's engines. The moment of ignition was unlike anything humans had ever seen. Instead of fire or plasma, the engine produced something that looked like liquid light, energy that flowed like water but blazed like a star. How fast can this thing go? Harrison asked, his voice filled with wonder. Arya's response made everyone in the control room stop breathing. At full capacity, this vessel could cross your galaxy in approximately 6 months of your time. The implications were staggering. Humanity had been planning missions to nearby stars that would take hundreds of years. The Kethmaran ship could reach those same destinations in days, but the ship was still badly damaged. Many systems were beyond repair, and others required materials that didn't exist on Earth. This led to humanity's second great innovation, improvisation. Where the Kethmaran had built their ship using advanced but rigid technology, humans began creating hybrid solutions that combined alien principles with human engineering. They couldn't grow new hull sections like the original builders, but they could weld human-made patches that the ship's biological systems could eventually integrate. They couldn't replicate the ship's original weapons, but they could install human missile systems that the ship's targeting computers could operate. They couldn't fix the damaged navigation system, but they could build new sensors that provided the same information in different ways. Engineer Maria Santos led the effort to restore the ship's life support systems. It's like performing surgery on a patient while teaching them a new language at the same time, she explained to a group of visiting officials. We can't just replace broken parts. We have to teach the ship how to work with our replacements. The work was slow and sometimes dangerous. 3 team members were hospitalized when a power conduit overloaded during testing. Another volunteer suffered temporary memory loss after a neural interface malfunction. But each setback led to improvements. Each failure taught them something new about the ship's systems. Elena watched the progress with amazement and growing concern. The project was advancing faster than anyone had expected, but it was also attracting unwanted attention. Military officials from a dozen nations wanted to weaponize the technology. Corporate representatives offered massive amounts of money for exclusive access. Religious leaders debated whether humans had the right to use alien technology. "We're changing the world," she said to Marcus during one of their evening walks around the complex. "But I'm not sure we're ready for the consequences." Marcus nodded grimly. "Power like this has always been dangerous. The question is whether we can learn to use it responsibly." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alarm from the ship. Racing back to the control room, they found Yuki connected to her interface, her face pale with concentration. "Elena," she said without opening her eyes. "Arya is detecting something. Ships heading toward Earth from deep space." "Ships?" Elena's blood ran cold. "How many?" Arya's voice filled the room, calm but serious. "Long-range sensors detect at least 50 vessels approaching the system. They are not using any propulsion method in my databases." Through her neural link, Yuki could sense the ship's growing anxiety. After 12,000 years of silence, their activity had been noticed. Something was coming, and Arya didn't think it was friendly. "How long until they arrive?" Elena asked. "Based on their current trajectory and acceleration, approximately 6 weeks. Elena looked around the control room at the team that had become her family. They had awakened something incredible, but they might have also awakened something terrible. The ship was still barely functional, held together by human ingenuity and alien technology that they only half understood. Whatever was coming, they would have to face it with what they had built together. A broken alien ship repaired with human determination, operated by people who refused to accept that anything was impossible. The real test was about to begin. The hybrid ship rose from the ocean for the first time in 12,000 years. Elena watched from the command center as the massive vessel broke the surface, water cascading from its hull like a metal whale emerging from the depths. The ship, they had named Phoenix, looked nothing like the elegant craft the Kethmaran had originally built. Human additions covered much of the hull. Missile pods jutted out at odd angles. Sensor arrays created a forest of metal spines along the ship's back. Welded patches of earth steel formed ugly scars across the alien metal. It was beautiful and horrible at the same time, a testament to human stubbornness and creativity. "She's not pretty," admitted Chief Engineer Santos, "but she's ours." The Phoenix's first spaceflight was scheduled as a simple test, just a trip to the moon and back to make sure all systems worked properly. But Arya had other concerns. "The approaching ships are still 6 weeks away," the AI reported, "but their scouts may arrive much sooner. We need to be prepared." "Elena," sat in the captain's chair, a position she had never wanted but somehow inherited. Around her, the bridge crew worked at stations that combined human keyboards with alien interfaces. Dr. Tanaka maintained her neural connection to the ship's systems. Her consciousness merged with Aria's to coordinate the hybrid technology. All stations report ready, announced Marcus, who had become the ship's tactical officer. Engineering reports that the main engine is stable. Navigation confirms our course to lunar orbit. Take us out, Elena ordered. The Phoenix lifted slowly from the ocean, its engines producing that strange liquid light that human scientists still didn't understand. Water streamed from the hull as they climbed through the atmosphere. Below them, Earth grew smaller, and above them, space opened like an infinite black ocean. The first jump to faster-than-light speed was both terrifying and wonderful. Elena felt her stomach drop as reality twisted around them. The stars stretched into lines of light, and then everything went white. When the sensation faded, they were floating in space near the moon. The trip that should have taken days had happened in seconds. "Jump successful," reported Dr. Harrison from the engine room. "All systems nominal. The ship is adapting to our piloting style better than expected." But their celebration was interrupted by Aria's urgent warning. "Multiple contacts detected at the edge of the solar system. 5 ships, configuration unknown. They are scanning us." The newcomers weren't the main fleet they had been expecting. These were smaller vessels, sleek and predatory-looking, moving with a speed that made human spacecraft look like they were standing still. Elena ordered the Phoenix back to Earth, but the scout ships followed them. As they entered Earth's atmosphere, the alien vessels took up positions around the planet, clearly waiting for something. "They're not attacking," observed Marcus. "They're studying us." Through the ship's sensors, Elena could see the alien craft more clearly. They were organic-looking, with hulls that seemed to shift and flow like living tissue. Weapons pods lined their sides like rows of teeth. "Aria, do you recognize them?" "Negative. These ships do not match any configuration in Kethmoran databases. However, their scanning pattern suggests they are cataloging this system's resources." The meaning of that statement became clear when Earth's space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures at the edge of the solar system. Something huge was approaching, something that made the scout ships look like insects. Elena ordered the Phoenix to dock with the International Space Station, where representatives from Earth's governments were waiting. The hastily arranged meeting took place in the station's main conference room, with world leaders participating via video link. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena began, "we are no longer alone in the universe, and our neighbors don't seem friendly." The main alien fleet arrived 3 days later. Elena watched from the Phoenix's bridge as dozens of massive ships emerged from hyperspace. Each vessel was the size of a city, their hulls covered with what looked like harvesting equipment. They took up positions around Earth like hunters surrounding their prey. "Aria, what are we looking at?" "Based on their configuration and behavior," Aria replied grimly, "these appear to be devourers. They are a nomadic species that consumes entire worlds for resources. I have records of 17 civilizations that have been completely consumed by their fleets." The lead devourer ship transmitted a message to Earth in dozens of languages, including perfect English. The voice that spoke was cold and mechanical, without any emotion. "Inhabitants of the 3rd planet, you have been selected. For resource extraction, evacuation is not possible. Resistance is futile. Harvesting will begin in 72 hours. Elena felt her blood freeze. 72 hours to prepare for the end of the world? "How do we fight them?" she asked Aria. The Kethmoran Empire tried, twice, to stop devourer fleets. Both times they failed. Their standard tactics are to overwhelm enemies with superior numbers and firepower. They have never encountered effective resistance. "Then we don't use standard tactics," Elena said firmly. "We use human tactics." The next 3 days were a frantic rush of preparation. The Phoenix couldn't match the devourers in raw firepower, but it had something they didn't expect: unpredictability. Human engineering had made the ship capable of rapid adaptation, and Aria had learned to think like a human as well as a Kethmoran. When the devourers began their attack, They followed. Their standard pattern: massive ships moved into position around Earth and began deploying harvesting equipment. They expected either surrender or ineffective resistance from a primitive civilization. Instead, they got the Phoenix. Elena's ship appeared behind the Devourer, flagship like a ghost, moving through space in ways that violated their understanding of physics. The Phoenix's hybrid engines allowed it to jump in and out of hyperspace at will, appearing and disappearing faster than the alien sensors could track. The first attack was a complete surprise. Human missiles, guided by Keth-Moran targeting systems, punched through the flagship's shields and tore into its hull. The Devourer's return fire hit empty space as the Phoenix vanished and reappeared on the other side of their formation. "How are they doing that?" demanded the Devourer fleet commander, his voice intercepted by Earth's monitoring stations. "No ship can maneuver like that," Arya answered through the Phoenix's communication system. "You are correct. No normal ship can maneuver like this. But this is not a normal ship." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The Devourers tried to use their overwhelming numbers to surround and destroy the Phoenix, but the human ship refused to fight by conventional rules. It darted between the massive alien vessels like a minnow among whales, striking at weak points and disappearing before retaliation could arrive. Dr. Tanaka, connected to the ship through her neural interface, guided the Phoenix through maneuvers that should have been impossible. The ship twisted through space, its hull bending and flexing in ways that organic Devourer technology couldn't match. "The ship is learning," she reported to Elena. "Every attack, every evasive maneuver, it's getting better. It's adapting to their tactics faster than they can adapt to ours." The Devourer's mistake was treating the Phoenix like a normal warship. They tried to predict its movements using standard tactical analysis. But human creativity had created something that didn't follow standard patterns. The ship fought like its crew, improvising, adapting, refusing to give up even when the situation seemed hopeless. After 6 hours of battle, 3 Devourer ships were destroyed and 2 more were severely damaged. The Phoenix had taken hits but had somehow absorbed the damage, its hybrid hull repairing itself even as the battle continued. The Devourer commander made the decision that would change everything. Instead of continuing the attack, he ordered his fleet to withdraw to a safe distance. "This is impossible," he transmitted to his superiors. "A single ship is defeating our entire advance fleet. The beings of this world have technology we do not understand." Elena slumped in her command chair, exhausted but victorious. Around her, the bridge crew was cheering and embracing. They had done the impossible. A single ship had driven off an invasion fleet. But Arya's next words reminded them that this was only the beginning. "The Devourers are regrouping," the AI reported. "They are transmitting data about this encounter to their main fleet. Within days, every major power in the galaxy will know about Earth and the Phoenix." Elena looked out at the stars, no longer seeing them as distant points of light but as the homes of civilizations that might now see Earth as a threat. They had won their first battle, but they had also announced their presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. Humanity was no longer hiding in the shadows. They were players on the galactic stage whether they were ready or not. The message arrived 2 weeks after the battle with the Devourers. It was transmitted on frequencies that human technology couldn't detect, received only by Arya's ancient communication systems. Elena stood in the Phoenix's communication center, watching symbols flow across displays she still didn't fully understand. Arya translated the message in real time, its voice carrying an odd mixture of excitement and concern. "You have been invited to appear before the Galactic Council," the AI announced. "This is unprecedented. Most civilizations wait centuries before receiving such an invitation." "Is that good or bad?" Elena asked. "That depends entirely on what the Council decides to do with you." The council chambers were located on Nexus, a massive space station that orbited a neutron star at the galaxy's heart. The Phoenix's journey there took 3 days of jumping through hyperspace, past systems filled with worlds Elena could barely imagine. As they approached Nexus, Elena stared in wonder at the station's immense size. It was larger than Earth's moon, covered in structures that represented dozens of different architectural styles. Ships from across the galaxy docked at ports that could accommodate vessels of every possible design. Representatives from over 300 civilizations meet here, Arya explained. The major powers control the council, but every species has a voice. Elena felt the weight of history as she prepared for the meeting. She was about to become the first human to address the galactic community. Whatever she said would determine how the rest of the universe viewed her species. The council chamber was a vast sphere lined with viewing platforms. As Elena walked onto the central speaking platform, she saw beings that challenged every assumption she had about life in the universe. Some were vaguely humanoid, others were so alien she couldn't determine where their heads ended and their bodies began. The Kethmoran representative was the first to speak. He was tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to be made of polished metal. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of an empire that had ruled much of the galaxy for millennia. "Humans of Earth," he began, "you stand accused of theft and desecration. The vessel you call Phoenix is sacred Kethmoran property, abandoned but not forgotten. Your modifications to our ship are an insult to our ancestors and our technology." Elena had prepared for this moment. She stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "With respect, honored representative, your people abandoned that ship 12,000 years ago. They declared it irreparable and left it to rust on the ocean floor. We didn't steal your technology, we rescued it." A murmur ran through the chamber. Several species representatives leaned forward with interest. The Kethmoran's metallic face showed no expression, but Elena could sense his anger. "Furthermore," she continued, "we didn't just repair your ship, we improved it. The Phoenix can do things now that your original design never imagined. If that insults your ancestors, then perhaps your ancestors weren't as great as you believe." The chamber erupted in voices speaking dozens of languages. Elena stood calmly in the center of the chaos, waiting for order to return. The next speaker was a representative of the Zephyrian Collective, a technocratic civilization known for their advanced science. The being looked like a collection of crystalline formations that shifted and flowed as it spoke. "The humans' claims are interesting," the Zephyrian said. "Our analysis of the engagement with the Devourers suggests their vessel possesses capabilities that should not be possible with known physics. We would be interested in studying their modifications." Elena recognized the tone. The Zephyrians wanted to take apart the Phoenix and figure out how it worked. "I'm afraid that's not possible," she replied. "The Phoenix isn't just a machine anymore. It's evolved into something new. Something that exists partly in normal space and partly in dimensions we're only beginning to understand. Dismantling it would be like trying to study a living being by taking it apart piece by piece." The third major power to speak was the Hadron Confederacy, a militant alliance of warrior species. Their representative was a massive creature covered in what looked like natural armor with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like burning coals. "Humans," the Hadron rumbled. "You have proven yourselves in battle. This is admirable, but one victory does not make you equals. You have defeated scouts and damaged ships. You have not faced the full might of a galactic power." Elena smiled. "You're absolutely right. We're not your equals." She paused, letting the words sink in. "We're something you've never encountered before. We're a species that looks at impossible problems and finds solutions you never considered." The council's deliberation lasted for hours. Elena waited in a comfortable chamber aboard the station, watching through a viewport as ships from across the galaxy came and went. The diversity was staggering. Vessels that looked like they had been grown rather than built, others that seemed to be made of pure energy, some that defied her ability to understand what she was seeing. Arya kept her company during the wait, sharing stories of the galaxy's history and the various civilizations that made up the council. The Kethmoran were the first to achieve faster-than-light travel in this region, the AI explained. They built their empire by offering protection and technology to developing worlds. In return, those worlds provided resources and labor. "Sounds familiar," Elena said dryly. What happened to them? They became comfortable, complacent. They stopped innovating and started believing their way was the only way. When they encountered problems their standard solutions couldn't solve, they gave up rather than adapt. The message was clear. The Kethmoran had abandoned the Phoenix because they couldn't fix it with their established methods. They had never considered that there might be other approaches, other solutions. When the council reconvened, the chamber's mood had changed. Elena could sense tension in the air, decisions that would reshape the galaxy's power structure. The council's speaker, an ancient being whose species Elena didn't recognize, delivered their verdict in a voice that seemed to come from the depths of time itself. Humans of Earth, the council has reached a decision. Your actions have demonstrated both remarkable capability and dangerous unpredictability. You have defeated enemies that have terrorized the galaxy for centuries, but you have also shown that you cannot be controlled or predicted by conventional means. Elena held her breath, waiting for the rest. Therefore, the council offers you a choice. Accept protectorate status under the Kethmoran Empire, surrender your vessel and technology for study, and be welcomed as junior members of the galactic community, or maintain your independence and face the consequences of standing alone against powers that have ruled the stars for millions of years. The chamber fell silent. Elena realized that every being present was waiting for her answer, an answer that would determine humanity's place in the universe. She thought about her species, about their history of refusing to accept the impossible. Humans who had crossed oceans in wooden boats, who had flown when everyone said it was impossible, who had reached for the stars when they were told to stay on the ground. Honored Council, Elena said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. We choose to stand alone. The Kethmoran representative stepped forward, his metallic face finally showing emotion. Anger and disbelief. You are making a mistake that will cost your species everything, he warned. You cannot stand against the combined might of galactic civilization. Your single ship, no matter how unusual, cannot protect an entire world. Elena's reply became legendary, repeated across the galaxy in dozens of languages, and remembered long after the events that followed. You're right about one thing, she said calmly. We can't protect our world with a single ship. She paused, looking around the chamber at the hundreds of representatives. That's why we're not going to stop at one ship. The implications of her words rippled through the chamber. Elena wasn't just refusing the council's offer. She was announcing humanity's intention to become a galactic power in their own right. As the Phoenix departed Nexus, Elena stood on the bridge watching the massive station shrink behind them. She had gambled everything on humanity's greatest strength, their refusal to accept limitations. Now they had to prove that her confidence wasn't just empty words. They had to show the galaxy that humans could do more than just repair one broken ship. They had to build a fleet, forge alliances, and prepare for challenges that would test everything they had learned. The real work was just beginning. The Devourer main fleet arrived like a storm made of metal and hunger. Elena watched from the Phoenix's bridge as thousands of ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Each vessel was massive, designed for one purpose: to strip entire worlds down to their cores and consume everything that lived. Fleet composition confirmed, reported Marcus from his tactical station. 2,000 harvesting ships, 500 battle cruisers, 50 command vessels, and one mothership approximately the size of Earth's moon. Elena felt her stomach clench. The scout fleet they had defeated months ago was nothing compared to this armada. This was the force that had consumed 17 civilizations, reducing thriving worlds to lifeless rocks. They're not approaching immediately, observed Dr. Tanaka through her neural link with the ship. They're waiting for something. The answer came from Area. Long-range sensors detect additional fleets approaching from other vectors. The Devourers have called for reinforcements from across their territory. This is not just an attack on Earth. It is intended as a demonstration to the galaxy. Elena understood. The Devourers wanted to make an example of humanity, to show every civilization what happened when you defied the established order. By destroying Earth publicly and thoroughly, they would discourage others from following humanity's path of independence. But Elena had spent the months since the council meeting preparing for this moment. The Phoenix wasn't alone anymore. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. Around Earth, space shimmered as dozens of ships decloaked. Each vessel was different, reflecting the creativity and determination of its builders. Some were clearly built by humans, incorporating lessons learned from the Phoenix. Others were alien ships whose crews had chosen to stand with humanity against impossible odds. The Zephyrian vessel Crystal Harmony was the most beautiful, its crystalline hull refracting light into rainbow patterns. The Hadron warship Iron Fist looked like a floating fortress bristling with weapons and armor. Smaller ships from dozens of species completed the formation, each representing worlds that had decided the galaxy's old order needed to change. "How is this possible?" demanded the Devourer fleet commander, his transmission intercepted by Earth sensors. Intelligence reports indicated only one functional vessel. Elena smiled grimly as she opened a channel to the enemy fleet. "You're right, there was only one ship 6 months ago, but you made a critical error. You assumed we would stay hidden, stay afraid, stay alone." Through the Phoenix's communication system, she addressed not just the Devourers, but the entire galaxy, broadcasting on every frequency that civilized species monitored. "For too long, the galaxy has been ruled by fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear of trying new approaches to old problems. The major powers maintain their control by convincing everyone else that resistance is futile, that the established order is the only order." The Devourer mothership began moving toward Earth, its escort of battlecruisers spreading out in a formation that had conquered worlds for millennia. "Today that changes," Elena continued. "Today we show the galaxy that there is always another way, always a solution that hasn't been tried, always hope for those brave enough to reach for it." The battle began when the Phoenix vanished from normal space and reappeared inside the Devourer formation. But this time, it wasn't alone. The entire human-led fleet followed, each ship jumping to a different location within the enemy fleet. What followed wasn't a battle in any traditional sense. It was a demonstration of everything the galaxy had thought impossible. The Phoenix didn't just fight. It multiplied. Through her neural link, Dr. Tanaka guided the ship through a process that Arya had discovered during their months of experimentation. The ship split into multiple copies of itself, each one as real and functional as the original. "Impossible!" screamed the Devourer commander. "Ships cannot replicate themselves." "You're correct again," Elena replied calmly. "Normal ships can't do that. But normal ships exist entirely in normal space. The Phoenix exists partly in what we call possibility space, a dimension where potential becomes reality through focused intention." Each copy of the Phoenix fought with the same unpredictable tactics that had characterized humanity's first victory. But now those tactics were being employed by dozens of ships simultaneously, creating a web of chaos that the Devourers couldn't counter. The Allied fleet fought with equal creativity. The Zephyrian ship projected hard-light constructs that confused Devourer sensors. The Hadron vessel used its massive armor to ram enemy ships while protecting smaller Allied vessels. Each species contributed their unique capabilities to the battle, but they all fought with a distinctly human approach, adapting, improvising, refusing to follow conventional tactics. "This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Force to all Allied vessels," Marcus announced over the fleet communication channel. "Remember, we're not trying to defeat them with superior firepower. We're showing them that their way isn't the only way." The Devourer fleet, designed to overwhelm enemies through sheer numbers and firepower, found itself facing something it had never encountered. An enemy that treated the battle as a collaborative exercise in creative problem-solving. Individual. Devourer ships began to surrender, their crews overwhelmed by the impossibility of what they were witnessing. Some requested asylum, asking to join the Allied fleet rather than continue serving masters who had taught them that adaptation was weakness. The mothership, massive and heavily armed, became the focus of the final phase of the battle. Elena made a decision that surprised even Arya. "All ships stand down. Phoenix will handle the mothership alone." "Elena, that's suicide," protested Marcus. "That thing is the size of a moon." Trust me, Elena replied. Through her command interface, she felt the Phoenix responding to her thoughts, preparing for something that had never been attempted before. The Phoenix approached the mothership directly, making no attempt to evade its massive weapons. Energy, beams that could vaporize planets, struck the human ship, but instead of destroying it, they seemed to be absorbed into its hull. "What are you doing?" Arya asked, its voice filled with something that might have been awe, something the Kethmoran never imagined, Elena replied. "We're not just adapting to the enemy's weapons, we're teaching the ship to rewrite the fundamental rules of physics in local space." The Phoenix began to change. Its hull flowed and shifted, growing larger and more complex. Systems that had never existed before came online, powered by the energy it had absorbed from the Devourer weapons. The ship was evolving in real time, becoming something entirely new. "You wanted to see the ultimate weapon," Elena broadcast to the galaxy. "Here it is, a civilization that refuses to accept limitations, working with beings who thought they knew what was possible." The mothership fired again, pouring enough energy to destroy a small planet into the Phoenix. The human ship absorbed it all and grew even larger, its hull now rivaling the Devourer mothership in size. But instead of retaliating with violence, Elena did something that changed the course of galactic history. The Phoenix extended tendrils of energy toward the mothership, not to destroy it, but to connect with it. "We're offering you a choice," Elena announced to the Devourer crew. "Continue following leaders who told you that strength comes from consumption and destruction, or join us in discovering what's possible when different species work together." Through the energy connection, human and Kethmoran technology interfaced with the Devourer ship's systems. The alien crew experienced something they had never felt before, the sensation of creative collaboration, of finding solutions through cooperation rather than conquest. One by one, the Devourer ships began to power down their weapons. Crews that had been raised to believe that only the strong survived discovered that strength could come from unity, that innovation could emerge from diversity. The Devourer fleet commander was the last to surrender, his worldview shattered by the impossibility of what he had witnessed. "How?" was all he could say. Elena's answer was broadcast across the galaxy, heard by every civilization that monitored space communications. "We didn't defeat you with superior weapons or overwhelming force," she explained. "We defeated you with something your species had forgotten existed. Hope. Hope that things could be better, that problems could be solved, that the impossible was just another challenge waiting for the right approach." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed in ways that no one had anticipated. Species that had been enemies for millennia began working together on problems that had seemed unsolvable. Technologies that had stagnated for thousands of years began advancing rapidly as different approaches combined and evolved. The Phoenix became the flagship of a new kind of alliance, one based not on dominance, but on the principle that every species, no matter how small or seemingly primitive, might possess the key to unlocking new possibilities. Elena stood on the observation deck of the evolved Phoenix, watching as construction began on the first truly collaborative space station. Humans worked alongside former Devourers. Kethmoran scientists shared their knowledge with Zephyrian crystalsmiths, and Hadron warriors trained alongside species they had once conquered. "What have we created?" she asked Arya, who had become something far more than a simple ship's AI during their journey. The stars looked different from the observation deck of the Galactic Concord vessel, Peaceful Envoy. Ambassador Krelthar of the Vexari stood with his forearms clasped behind his back, his iridescent skin reflecting the light of the unfamiliar yellow sun ahead. This solar system had been monitored for decades, but only recently had the signals from the third planet become too numerous and complex to ignore. "Ambassador, we will reach Earth orbit in approximately 6 hours, said the ship's navigator, a tall, willowy being with pale blue skin. Krelthar nodded. "Alert the diplomatic team. I want Dr. Trazil ready for first contact protocols." As the navigator left, Krelthar turned to the data screens displaying information about the species they were about to meet. Humans. Such a simple name for what appeared to be a remarkably complex species. Their progress from basic tools to space exploration had occurred at a pace that alarmed many members of the Concord Council. Reviewing the humans again? Dr. Traziel entered the observation deck, her specialized sensory appendages twitching with excitement. As the mission's xenobiologist, she had spent years studying the transmissions from Earth. They concern me, Krelthar admitted. Their history is filled with conflict. Their entertainment glorifies violence. Even their greatest technological advances seem to emerge from warfare. Dr. Traziel moved to stand beside him. That's what makes them fascinating. No other species we've encountered has advanced so quickly while spending so much energy fighting themselves. The peaceful envoy continued its approach to Earth, carefully, monitored by human defense systems. The first detection of the alien vessel had triggered global alerts, but the calm, peaceful messages sent ahead had prevented panic. Now the Earth Space Defense Force awaited their arrival, led by Captain Susan Miller aboard the ESD Horizon. Any change in the alien vessel's approach? Susan asked her sensor officer. No, Captain. They maintained the exact course and speed they transmitted. All weapon systems appear inactive just as they claimed. Susan nodded. It was hard to believe this was happening during her command. First contact with an alien species. Everything humanity had speculated about for centuries was about to be confirmed. Captain, we're receiving a new transmission from the alien vessel, said Communications Officer Jack Nelson. They're requesting permission to dock with our ship rather than proceeding directly to Earth. They say it's standard first contact. Protocol. Susan considered this. It made sense. A neutral meeting ground before taking aliens to Earth itself. Grant permission. Alert Lieutenant Grayson and his security team to prepare for the diplomatic reception. Lieutenant Alan Grayson checked his sidearm out of habit, then secured it in its holster. His team of 6 stood at attention in the docking bay, their uniforms crisp and their expressions professional despite the historic nature of the moment. Remember, Grayson told them, no sudden movements. No reaching for weapons unless I give the direct order. These beings have traveled across space to meet us peacefully. Let's not start an interstellar incident. The docking procedure went smoothly. Engineers on both vessels had worked out the compatibility issues in advance. When the airlock doors finally opened, the humans got their first look at members of the Galactic Concord. Ambassador Krelthar led the delegation. His four-armed, slender form stood just over 7 feet tall. Behind him came Dr. Traziel, whose body resembled an upright centipede with dozens of small, precise appendages. 3 other aliens of different species followed, each more strange and wonderful than the last. Captain Susan stepped forward. On behalf of Earth and humanity, I welcome you to the ESD Horizon. I am Captain Susan Miller. Krelthar made a fluid gesture with his upper right arm. I am Ambassador Krelthar of the Vexari, representing the Galactic Concord, a federation of 17 sapient species dedicated to peace and mutual advancement. The formal introductions continued, with each alien delegate greeting the human officers. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Then came a moment that would later be analyzed countless times by both species. One of the alien delegates, a being covered in short blue fur, made a sudden movement, reaching into a pouch at its side. In that split second, Lieutenant Grayson's hand moved to his sidearm. He didn't draw it. He merely positioned himself to do so if needed. The movement was so fast, so instinctive, that most of the humans didn't even notice it. But the aliens did. Dr. Traziel's sensory appendages flared with alarm. The blue-furred delegate froze, its 6 eyes widening. My apologies, the alien said quickly, slowly removing a translation device from the pouch. I merely wished to adjust my translator. The moment passed. Captain Susan, who had noticed Grayson's reaction, gave him a subtle nod of approval for his restraint. The initial greetings concluded, and the delegation moved to the ship's conference room for the first official meeting between humanity and the Galactic Concord. As they walked, Dr. Traziel activated her bioscanner, a small device disguised as an ornament on her body. The readings it displayed on her personal viewer made her upper appendages twitch involuntarily. The conference room was prepared with seating modified to accommodate the various alien physiologies. Captain Susan sat across from Ambassador Krelthar, with officers and delegates arranged on either side. "We have many questions," Susan began. "Humanity has wondered about life beyond our world for generations." "As have we wondered about you," Krelthar replied. "Your world has been of interest to us since we first detected your early radio transmissions. Your technological progress has been remarkable." "Thank you," Susan said, though she noticed a strange tone in the translated words. "We're a curious species." The meeting continued for 2 hours, covering basic information about both sides. The humans explained Earth's nations, governmental systems, and broad history. The aliens described the galactic concord, its founding, principles, and the diversity of worlds under its protection. Throughout the exchange, Dr. Traziel continued her scans, growing increasingly disturbed by what she was seeing. The human nervous system, muscle density, reaction time, pain tolerance, all far beyond what should be possible for a naturally evolved species at their technological level. When the meeting concluded, Captain Susan invited the delegation to tour the ship. As they moved through the corridors, Lieutenant Grayson walked slightly behind the group, alert for any issues. "Your security officer," Dr. Traziel said to Susan. "He moved with exceptional speed earlier. Is that common among humans?" "Alan, he's well trained but not unusual by our standards," Susan replied. "All our security personnel have similar capabilities." This answer seemed to trouble the alien scientist deeply. Later, as the alien delegation prepared to return to their vessel with plans for a larger diplomatic meeting on Earth the next day, Dr. Traziel pulled Ambassador Krelthar aside. "We must speak privately," she whispered, her translator set to a frequency only the ambassador could hear. Once they were alone in a small chamber on their ship, Dr. Traziel displayed her findings. "These humans," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "they're unlike anything we've encountered. Their bodies are literally built for conflict in ways that defy natural evolution. Their muscle fiber density, bone structure, adrenal response, it's as if they were designed for warfare." Krelthar studied the data with growing concern. "Are you suggesting—" "I need more samples, more data," Dr. Traziel said quickly. "But, Ambassador, if I'm right, we may have just made contact with the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and they don't even seem to know it." The next morning, Captain Susan Miller led a larger Earth delegation to meet with the aliens on the surface. They chose a military base outside of Denver as the meeting site, a decision that Ambassador Krelthar found concerning but accepted. The base was secure, isolated, and away from civilian populations. Logical reasons, but the fact that humans defaulted to a military installation spoke volumes. Dr. Traziel had barely slept. She spent the night analyzing her initial readings of human physiology, comparing them to every known species in the Concord database. Nothing matched the unusual combination of traits she observed in humans. Their endurance, reaction time, and threat response systems were optimized beyond what natural evolution should produce. The Earth helicopter landed at the base, and Susan stepped out with her team. Ambassador Krelthar and 5 other alien representatives exited their shuttle nearby. Humans and aliens walked toward each other across the tarmac, 2 groups from vastly different worlds meeting under the bright Colorado sun. "Welcome to Earth," Susan said, extending her hand before remembering that not all species appreciated physical contact. She smoothly transitioned the gesture into a slight bow. Krelthar returned the bow. "We are honored to stand on your world," the base commander, a man with gray hair and a weathered face, stepped forward. "I'm Commander Frank Johnson. I'll be overseeing security during your visit." As they walked toward the main building, Dr. Traziel activated her scanners again, this time focusing on a wider range of humans. The results only confirmed her suspicions. Every human showed the same unusual biological markers. Inside, they were led to a large room with a circular table. Representatives from major Earth nations were already seated, along with scientists and military officers. The alien delegation took their positions across the table. "Before we begin formal discussions," Susan said, Commander Johnson has suggested we give you a tour of our facilities to demonstrate our openness and build trust. Some of the aliens exchanged glances. In their experience, no species ever truly opened their military bases to outsiders. We would be grateful, Krelthar said carefully. The tour began with standard areas, communication centers, living quarters, and research labs. But when they reached the training facilities, everything changed. Commander Johnson led them to an observation deck overlooking a large indoor arena. Below, two groups of soldiers engaged in combat training. They moved with incredible speed and precision, their bodies absorbing impacts that would cripple any conquered species. This is just standard close-quarters combat training, Johnson explained casually. Nothing special. Dr. Traziel's sensor appendages flared in alarm. What the humans considered nothing special was horrifying to watch. The soldiers fought, with controlled violence that seemed impossible to maintain without serious injury. "Are they not hurting each other?" asked one of the alien delegates, a small reptilian being named Shistor. Johnson laughed. "Oh, they'll have some bruises, maybe a sprained wrist or two. But this is light training. We save the serious stuff for special forces." The aliens fell silent, processing this information. If this was light training, what did serious look like? Next, they visited the base's medical facility where Dr. Olivia Bryant was eager to share human medical knowledge with the alien visitors. "We've made great strides in trauma care," Dr. Bryant explained, showing them various equipment. "A human can lose up to 40% of their blood volume and still survive with proper treatment. Our bodies are quite resilient." Dr. Traziel asked, "And without treatment? How much can a human endure?" "That varies," Dr. Bryant replied. "But humans have survived remarkable trauma. There are cases of individuals continuing to function with multiple gunshot wounds, severe burns, or even impalement." The alien scientist made notes on her device, her appendages trembling slightly. "What about your pain response?" she asked. "How do humans process pain signals?" "We can compartmentalize pain," Dr. Bryant said. "In survival situations, humans can effectively ignore severe pain through adrenaline and focus. Our military trains specifically to function through pain that would normally be incapacitating." With each new revelation, the aliens grew more disturbed. The humans, seemingly oblivious to how unusual their capabilities were, continued proudly showing their facilities. After the medical center, they visited the science division where Dr. Peter Wright, head of Earth's xenobiology department, waited to meet his alien counterparts. "This is incredible," he said, barely containing his excitement. "I've spent my career studying theoretical alien biology, and now I get to meet actual xenobiologists." Dr. Traziel found herself warming to the enthusiastic human scientist. He seemed genuinely curious rather than threatening. "Perhaps we could exchange some basic biological information," she suggested. "Nothing classified, of course." "Absolutely," Dr. Wright agreed. He pulled up displays showing human biological systems. "I'll start with the basics of human physiology." As he explained, human biology, Dr. Traziel and the other alien scientists became increasingly alarmed. Humans had redundant systems throughout their bodies. Their blood could clot rapidly to prevent blood loss. Their bones were remarkably dense yet flexible. Their digestive systems could process a wide variety of foods, including some mild toxins. And, "This is fascinating," Dr. Wright continued, unaware of the aliens' growing concern. "Humans can actually become stronger when our muscles tear during exercise. We call it hypertrophy. Our bodies rebuild damaged muscle tissue to be stronger than before." Ambassador Krelthar exchanged glances with his team. A species that grew stronger from damage? It was unheard of. Later that day, they observed a cultural presentation where children from a local school performed for the visitors. The aliens watched as small humans enacted a play about Earth's history. And then the brave soldiers fought. "For freedom," a child narrator said as others pretended to battle on stage. Dr. Traziel leaned toward Krelthar. "Even their younglings simulate warfare." The ambassador nodded grimly. "I've counted 17 mentions of war or battle in this short performance." When the official events ended for the day, the alien delegation returned to their ship. They gathered in the secure conference room, all speaking at once about what they had witnessed. Silence, Krelthar finally ordered. Dr. Traziel, share your findings. The xenobiologist displayed her data on the main screen. These humans are biological impossibilities. Their physical capabilities, redundant systems, and pain tolerance cannot be explained by natural evolution. They show signs of deliberate engineering. That's not possible, objected Xistor. They have no evidence of such advanced genetic technology. Because they didn't engineer themselves, Dr. Traziel replied. Something else did long ago. Look at these genetic markers. They contain mathematical sequences that simply don't occur in nature. How dangerous are they? Asked another delegate. Krelthar thought of the casual comment Commander Johnson had made earlier. Humans have fought 17 major wars just in the last century alone. Very dangerous, the ambassador said quietly. The entire species appears optimized for conflict, and they don't even realize it. Dr. Traziel looked at her readings again. Ambassador, I believe we need to report this to the Concord Council immediately. These humans weren't just shaped by a hostile environment. They were engineered for war. Ambassador Krelthar stood before the holographic projection of the Concord Council. 17 representatives from different worlds looked down at him with expressions ranging from disbelief to horror as he finished his report on humanity. These claims are extraordinary, said Elder Vox of the Meridian Worlds, his crystalline form shimmering with concern. You believe this species was artificially engineered? Dr. Traziel's evidence is compelling, Krelthar replied. We request permission to establish a research outpost on Mars to investigate further without alarming the humans. The Council deliberated briefly before granting approval. Proceed with caution, Elder Vox warned. If these humans are indeed weapons, we must determine who created them and why before they spread beyond their solar system. 2 weeks later, a Concord science vessel arrived at Mars under the cover story of cultural exchange. The humans welcomed the additional alien visitors, seeing it as a sign of growing interstellar relations. Little did they know that beneath the Mars colony's main dome, the aliens were building a sophisticated laboratory dedicated to unraveling the mystery of human origins. Dr. Samantha Wilson sat in her office at the Global Archaeological Institute in Chicago, reviewing the strange data requests from the alien visitors. As head of the Ancient Civilizations Department, she had access to the classified databases the aliens were most interested in. They've requested every scrap of information on human evolution from 400,000 to 200,000 years ago, she murmured to herself. Every anomalous finding, every unexplained evolutionary jump. Samantha pulled up the visitor logs. The aliens had toured museums, research facilities, and even remote dig sites. Their questions always circled back to the same period, when Homo sapiens suddenly appeared in the fossil record with capabilities far beyond their predecessors. She picked up her phone and called her colleague, Dr. Kevin Barnes, a geneticist, specializing in human genome mapping. Kevin, it's Sam. I need your help with something odd. Can you meet me for coffee? An hour later, they sat in a quiet corner of a campus cafe. The aliens are digging into our evolutionary history with unusual focus, Samantha explained. They've requested access to the Complete Human Genome Legacy database. Kevin frowned. That's strange. What would they want with our genetic history? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Will you help me look into what they're searching for? Kevin nodded. I've been working on mapping some of the more unusual portions of our genome anyway. The non-coding regions that everyone used to, called junk DNA, have some bizarre patterns that don't make evolutionary sense. On Mars, Chief Investigator Zorvax led the Concord research team through a series of increasingly troubling discoveries. They had secretly obtained samples from ancient human remains at archaeological sites and were comparing them to modern human DNA. The change is too sudden, Zorvax told Dr. Traziel as they examined the holographic displays. There should be gradual mutations over hundreds of thousands of years, but instead, we see a massive restructuring approximately 300,000 years ago. And look at this, Dr. Traziel pointed to another display. These genetic sequences that enhance aggression, pain tolerance, and tribal instincts, they all contain the same mathematical pattern embedded within them. Zorvax's 6 eyes widened. A signature. Exactly, Dr. Traziel agreed. Whoever engineered humans, they signed their work. Back on Earth, Samantha and Kevin worked late into the night in Kevin's lab. They had been cross-referencing the alien data requests with unusual findings in archaeology and genetics. Look at this, Kevin said suddenly. The sections of DNA they're most interested in have a strange structure. It's almost like, what? Samantha leaned closer to the screen. Like encryption. Kevin typed rapidly, running the sequences through a different analysis program. These patterns shouldn't occur naturally. They're too perfect, too regular. On the screen, a complex geometric pattern emerged as the computer processed the DNA sequences. That's impossible, Samantha whispered. It looks like some kind of code. Kevin stared at the pattern. Sam, what if someone rewrote parts of our DNA? What if we were engineered? At that same moment on Mars, Zorvax made a breakthrough. I've cross-referenced the mathematical signature with the Concord Ancient Civilization database, he announced to the research team. There's a match. The room fell silent as he displayed the results. The signature in human DNA matched symbols, found in artifacts from a long-extinct civilization known as the progenitors, who had vanished millions of years before the Concord formed. The progenitors engineered humanity. Dr. Traziel could hardly believe it. But why? All historical records indicate they were a peaceful species dedicated to knowledge and exploration. Not at the end, said another researcher, pulling up ancient records. The final progenitor archives speak of a terrible war against a species called the Devourers. The progenitors were losing, their worlds falling one by one. Zorvax connected the pieces. They created humans as weapons, living weapons designed to fight when the progenitors could not. On Earth, Ambassador Krelthar received the urgent report from Mars. The evidence was now overwhelming. Humanity had not evolved naturally, but had been engineered by an ancient spacefaring civilization as biological weapons for a war that had ended millions of years ago. The ambassador faced a difficult decision. The Concord protocols were clear. Species designed as weapons were too dangerous to allow into the wider galaxy. Yet these humans had no knowledge of their origins or purpose. They were victims of ancient manipulation. As Krelthar contemplated his next move, Kevin and Samantha made their own discovery. Kevin had managed to partially decrypt the patterns in human DNA, revealing what appeared to be coordinates. These aren't random, Samantha said, plotting the coordinates on a star chart. This is a location in space. But that's over 50 light-years away, Kevin objected. How would ancient humans have coordinates to a star system they couldn't possibly have known existed? Unless someone put them there, Samantha replied. Kevin, I think we've found a message from whoever made us who we are. The Concord Council, upon receiving the full report from Mars, voted to implement containment protocols. A fleet of sterilization vessels was dispatched to the edge of the solar system as a contingency measure. Meanwhile, Samantha and Kevin decided to approach Captain Susan with their findings. They needed to warn humanity about what they had discovered and what the aliens might really be doing in the solar system. As these events unfolded, Dr. Traziel made one final, stunning discovery in the Mars laboratory. The progenitors hadn't just made humans aggressive and resilient. They had engineered them with the capacity to bond deeply with their allies, to sacrifice for their group, to cooperate in ways that made them even more effective in conflict. They didn't just make killers, she told Zorvax. They made warriors with a purpose, to protect what they care about at any cost. The stage was now set for a confrontation that would reveal to humanity the terrifying truth about their origins, and force the galactic Concord to decide whether humans were too dangerous to exist in the wider universe. Ambassador Krelthar's shuttle descended toward the United Nations headquarters in New York. He had made a difficult decision that went against the Concord Council's vote. Instead of waiting for the sterilization fleet to arrive, he would warn humanity about their true origins and the danger they now faced. In her office at the Global Archaeological Institute, Samantha received an urgent call from Captain Susan. "Dr. Wilson, we need you and Dr. Barnes at the UN immediately. The alien ambassador has requested an emergency meeting with Earth's leaders, and he specifically asked for you two to attend." "Did he say why?" Samantha asked, catching her breath. "No, but he mentioned something about human origins. Your research must have caught their attention." 2 hours later, Samantha and Kevin sat in the Grand UN Assembly Hall alongside world leaders, military commanders, and top scientists. Captain Susan sat next to General Linda Morrison, the highest-ranking military officer involved in the alien contact program. Ambassador Crelthar entered with Dr. Traziel and Chief Investigator Zorvax. The room fell silent as the aliens took their places at the center of the chamber. "People of Earth," Crelthar began, his voice solemn, "I come before you today to reveal a truth that my team has discovered about your species, a truth that the Concord Council has deemed too dangerous to share with you." He nodded to Zorvax, who activated a holographic display showing DNA sequences alongside ancient symbols. "Approximately 300,000 years ago, your species underwent a dramatic and sudden change. This change was not natural evolution. You were engineered by an ancient civilization that we call the progenitors." Murmurs filled the room. Samantha and Kevin exchanged glances, their own suspicions confirmed. "The progenitors altered your DNA, enhancing your physical capabilities, your aggression, your pain tolerance, and your tribal instincts. They created a species optimized for warfare." General Morrison stood up. "Are you saying we're weapons? That some ancient aliens made us to fight their battles?" "Yes," Dr. Traziel answered. "Our evidence is conclusive. Your unique biological traits cannot be explained by natural evolution. You were designed to be the perfect warriors." The room erupted in shouting and questions. Secretary General Patrick Chen called for order. "Why are you telling us this now?" Chen asked when the room quieted. Crelthar's 4 hands clasped together in a gesture of regret. "Because the Concord Council has voted to quarantine your solar system. They believe you are too dangerous to join the wider galactic community. They fear what humanity might become if they learn of their true purpose." "And what happens if we resist this quarantine?" General Morrison asked, her voice steady but cold. "A fleet of sterilization vessels will arrive at the edge of your solar system in approximately 30 Earth days," Crelthar said. "I have broken our protocols by warning you." The room fell into stunned silence. Kevin Barnes stood up. "Ambassador, we've discovered something in our research that might be relevant. We found coordinates encoded in human DNA, pointing to a star system about 50 light-years from here." Zorvax's eyes widened. "You decrypted the genetic signature? Impressive. We think it might lead to answers about who engineered us and why." Samantha added, "If we could reach that location—" "Impossible," Zorvax interrupted. "Your technology is not advanced enough for such a journey." "But yours is," General Morrison said, her eyes narrowing. "Ambassador, you said you broke protocols to warn us. Would you be willing to help us find the truth?" Crelthar was silent for a long moment. "What do you propose?" "A joint expedition," Morrison replied. "Your ship, our people, working together to follow these coordinates. If humans were created as weapons, don't we deserve to know who made us and why?" The ambassador conferred briefly with his colleagues before responding. "The council would forbid this, but I believe it is the right course of action. We will help you." 3 days later, the peaceful envoy prepared for departure. Captain Susan Miller would represent Earth, along with Samantha, Kevin, and a small team of specialists. They would travel with Crelthar, Dr. Traziel, and Zorvax to the mysterious coordinates hidden in human DNA. As the ship left Earth's orbit, Samantha stared out at her home planet growing smaller in the viewport. "Do you think we'll find answers?" she asked Kevin, who stood beside her. "I hope so, but I'm more worried about what happens when the sterilization fleet arrives. If we don't find something useful, humanity could be facing extinction." The journey took 2 weeks at the alien ship's top speed. When they finally arrived at the coordinates, they found a yellow star with 7 planets. The 4th planet showed signs of ancient civilization. There are ruins on the surface, Zorvax reported as they entered orbit. And energy readings that shouldn't be possible from a dead world. They landed near the largest concentration of ruins, massive structures of an unknown black material that seemed to absorb light. The team donned environmental suits and ventured out onto the dusty surface. These buildings are millions of years old, Samantha said in awe as they approached the central structure. Yet they look almost new. Inside the main building, they found what appeared to be a control room. Strange symbols covered the walls, symbols that matched the patterns in human DNA. This is definitely progenitor technology, Krelthar confirmed, but it's more advanced than any ruins we've discovered before. Kevin approached a raised platform in the center of the room. As he stepped onto it, the platform began to glow with a soft, blue light. Symbols on the walls illuminated in sequence. I think it's responding to his human DNA, Dr. Traziel said, scanning the reaction with her instruments. Suddenly, a holographic figure appeared above the platform, a tall, slender being with 6 limbs and an elongated head. Genetic verification confirmed, the figure said in a language that somehow all of them could understand. Activating final message of the Progenitor High Council. The hologram changed, showing a group of beings similar to the first. One stepped forward and began to speak. If you are receiving this message, then our final creation has evolved as we hoped and has found its way back to its origins. We, the progenitors, once spanned 1,000 worlds. Now, we face extinction. The message continued, explaining how the progenitors had encountered a species they called the Devourers, beings that consumed all life and technology they encountered, spreading like a plague across the galaxy. We tried diplomacy. We tried conventional warfare. Nothing stopped their advance. In our desperation, we created you, a species engineered not just for combat, but for survival at any cost. We took a promising species on a protected world and accelerated your evolution, embedding within you the perfect balance of aggression and cooperation, of individual strength and group loyalty. The hologram showed images of early humans being modified by progenitor technology. Their DNA reshaped to create beings capable of surviving almost any hardship. We have seeded this weapon on a protected world. When they reach the stars, they will be ready to finish our war. Captain Susan stepped forward. But your war is over. The Devourers are gone. The hologram could not respond to questions, continuing its pre-recorded message. To our creation, you were made for a purpose, but your destiny is your own. We embedded this star map in your genetic code, hoping you would one day find this place and understand your origins. The knowledge and technology in this facility is our legacy to you. As the message ended, panels in the walls slid open, revealing repositories of ancient technology and data storage devices. They left all this for us, Kevin whispered. Their knowledge, their technology. A terrible gift, Krelthar said gravely. The Concord Council was right to fear humanity's potential. With this technology, you could become the most powerful species in the galaxy. Captain Susan turned to the ambassador. Or we could choose a different path than the one we were designed for. We were engineered for war, but we've also built civilizations, created art, and reached for the stars. We're more than just weapons, Ambassador. Samantha picked up one of the data devices. This is our history, our truth. We have a right to know it, and to decide what we do with it. As they gathered the progenitor legacy to take back to Earth, the team knew they faced an even greater challenge ahead. They had less than 2 weeks before the sterilization fleet would arrive at Earth. Somehow, they needed to convince the Galactic Concord that humanity, despite being engineered for war, deserved the chance to choose their own future. The peaceful envoy raced back toward Earth, pushing its engines beyond safe limits. On board, Captain Susan Miller and her team worked with the aliens to prepare their case for the Galactic Concord. They had only days before the sterilization fleet would reach Earth. We need someone to speak directly to the Concord Council, Ambassador Krelthar said during their strategy meeting. Someone who can make them understand that humanity deserves a chance despite your origins. I'll go, Susan said without hesitation. As a military officer, I represent exactly what they fear about humanity. If I can convince them we're more than weapons, it might change their minds. Dr. Traziel and Samantha worked together to analyze the progenitor technology they had recovered. The data devices contained incredible advances in medicine, energy production, and space travel, but they also held detailed records of how humans had been engineered. They didn't just make us stronger and more aggressive, Samantha said as she studied the information. They built in limits too, biological safeguards to keep us from becoming too dangerous. What kind of safeguards? Kevin asked, looking up from his own work. Empathy, Samantha replied. They enhanced our capacity to care for others, to form bonds, to protect our own. The same traits that make humans dangerous also give us the potential to be guardians rather than destroyers. When they reached Earth, they found the planet on high alert. The approaching Concord fleet had been detected at the edge of the solar system. World leaders had been informed of the situation, and military forces worldwide were preparing for a fight they couldn't possibly win. General Morrison met them at the landing site. We've got 48 hours before the fleet enters weapons range. Tell me you found something useful out there. We found the truth, Susan said. And maybe a way to save Earth. A day later, a small shuttle left Earth carrying a diplomatic mission to the Concord fleet. Captain Susan led the team, which included Samantha, Kevin, and surprisingly, Ambassador Krelthar. The ambassador had chosen to stand with humanity against the Concord's decision. They were escorted to the flagship, where the Concord Council had assembled via hologram to witness the proceedings. Elder Vox of the Meridian Worlds looked down at them with his crystalline eyes reflecting cold light. Ambassador Krelthar, you have violated council orders by warning the humans of our decision and by aiding them, Elder Vox stated. Do you deny these actions? I do not, Krelthar replied. I have come to believe that the council's decision is unjust. Humanity deserves to be judged by their actions, not their origins. They were created as weapons, argued another council member, a being of pure energy contained in a mechanical shell. Their entire biology is designed for warfare. They cannot escape their nature. Susan stepped forward. With respect, we are more than our biology. Yes, we discovered that we were engineered for war by the progenitors, but they also gave us the capacity to choose a different path. She activated a data device displaying the genetic codes the progenitors had embedded in humanity. They didn't just make us strong and aggressive. They gave us empathy, creativity, and the desire to protect. For every trait that makes us dangerous, they balanced it with one that could make us guardians. Pretty words, said a third council member, but your history speaks for itself. Warfare, violence, conquest, these define human civilization. We've made mistakes, Susan acknowledged. Terrible ones. But we've also created art, music, literature. We've sacrificed for each other, built civilizations based on cooperation, and reached for the stars not to conquer, but to explore. Samantha stepped forward and displayed images of the progenitor ruins. We found their legacy. They left us knowledge and technology, hoping we would one day understand our purpose. But they also left us a choice. The devourers the progenitors feared are gone, Kevin added. The war we were created to fight is over. Now we can choose what we become. The council deliberated, their holographic forms flickering as they communicated, privately. Finally, Elder Vox spoke. Your arguments are compelling but insufficient. Words alone cannot prove that a species engineered for war can overcome its nature. Just then, alarms sounded throughout the flagship. A tactical officer reported, unknown vessels approaching at high speed. On the display screens, dozens of Earth ships appeared, led by General Morrison's flagship. They had followed the diplomatic shuttle, prepared to fight for humanity's survival. Stand down your forces, Elder Vox commanded Susan, or this discussion is over. Susan looked at the display, then closed her eyes. She activated her communication device. General Morrison, this is Captain Miller. Hold position. Do not engage. I repeat, do not engage. To everyone's surprise, the Earth fleet immediately stopped advancing. You see, Susan said to the council, we were engineered with the capacity for violence, but also with the ability to choose peace. Even when facing extinction, we can control our nature. One act of restraint does not Elder Vox began. Let me propose something, Krelthar interrupted. A probationary period. Humanity agrees to limit its military expansion beyond their solar system. The conquered provides oversight and guidance. In return, humans share the progenitor knowledge they've recovered, which could benefit all species. And if they violate the terms, asked the energy being. Then the quarantine can be reimposed, Krelthar replied. But I believe they deserve the chance to prove what they can become. The council withdrew again for private discussion. When they returned, Elder Vox announced their decision. We will accept this proposal with additional safeguards. Monitoring stations will be established throughout the solar system. Any human ships leaving must carry Concord observers. These terms are non-negotiable. We accept, Susan said, relief evident in her voice. 3 months later, Captain Susan stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Concord Embassy in Geneva. Beside her stood Ambassador Krelthar, watching as humans and aliens worked together to build a new future. The first human-designed ship with progenitor technology launches next week, Susan told him. It's a research vessel, not a warship. A wise choice, Krelthar replied. Many in the Concord still fear what humanity might become. They're right. To be cautious, Susan admitted. We were made as weapons. That potential will always be part of us. Yet you choose differently, Krelthar observed. In the short time since we revealed your origins, your people have focused on medicine, environmental restoration, and peaceful exploration. We were engineered for war, Susan said, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. But we've evolved beyond our programming. The progenitors made us to fight, but they also gave us the ability to protect. In a laboratory nearby, Samantha and Kevin worked with scientists from a dozen alien species, studying the progenitor legacy together. We've isolated the gene sequences responsible for human aggression, an alien researcher reported. We could potentially modify them, reduce the violent tendencies in future generations. Samantha considered this. We could. But would we still be human without the fire that drives us? Maybe the answer isn't to change who we are, but to choose how we use our nature. Later that evening, Ambassador Krelthar sent his final report to the Concord Council before his reassignment. His words were simple, but profound. The humans have a saying, the true measure of a being is not how they were created, but what they choose to become. These humans, engineered as weapons, now choose to be shields. They use their strength not to dominate, but to protect. Perhaps in this lies the true legacy of the progenitors, not living weapons, but living guardians for a galaxy that will always face new threats. The terrifying truth of humanity's origins has become something unexpected, a source of hope. As the first joint human-alien expedition prepared to launch into deep space, humanity looked to the stars not as conquerors or destroyers, but as protectors. They carried with them the knowledge of who made them, why they were made, and most importantly, the freedom to choose what they would become.